Hello, it's me, Jess. Welcome to my channel. I'm here with another channeled message. This is a specific message. It might resonate with you, it might not. All right, this one is a little bit different because this message came out in sequence with another message, all surrounding the ending of a major karmic cycle. So you may have been drawn into this reading and this will resonate with you just as its standalone thing, and that's great. Always take what resonates for you. But if you are interested in the other reading, I will link it in the description box below. But just to pick up where we left off with the last reading, we were talking about the end of this major karmic cycle, which means this group, because there's multiple people that are involved here, will not incarnate together in future incarnations the way that they did in this incarnation and in previous incarnations, because the karmic cycle has been broken. The other thing we need to understand before we kind of dive into this is Spirit keeps saying this, like the ending of this major karmic cycle. That's different than the ending of just a regular schmegular karmic cycle, because there's a layering effect here. There's a lot of karmic cycles kind of all built and piled up into this one major karmic cycle, because there are multiple people that are involved here. So each one of these people has their own individual karmas, both within themselves, like how, they deal with their thoughts and their feelings and how they meet the world, those kind of karmas, but also their individual karmas with other people, other individuals, other groups of people, no matter how small or how large. And when you've got multiple people that all have all of that going on, that's quite a bit of layering already that adds quite a bit of complexity. But that's not the only thing that's really at play here, because we have this added variable here, and it's something to do with culture. And that's really what I want to focus on here in this part of the reading, is kind of the intersection between these like cultural traditional elements and the way that that intersects with decision making and respect. So whenever we're talking about culture, it's kind of a funny thing, because I've heard you can have a culture of one. I leave that to you to decide, but you can have cultures of like different sizes, like it exists on different levels, right? So even if you have a pair, like a couple, they form a culture between the two of them when they interact regularly, right? So that's like they speak the same language, they might have inside jokes, they have certain things that they regularly like to do, things that they particularly like, and things that they really, really don't like. They might dress like a certain way, or they start to develop this kind of like culture between the two of them that leads to kind of like, well, I expect this and I don't expect that, right? And then, a family develops a culture, a friend group develops a culture, no matter how big or how small. A religious group, that's a culture. A work environment, that's a culture, right? Nationally, that's a culture. So see how it's like all on these different levels. Well, each of us as people belong to multiple groups, aka multiple cultures and subcultures at the same time. That's actually a normal part of the human experience. And sometimes we express certain parts of our personality in one group and others in another group. And it actually is very, like, our personality stays consistent. It stays cohesive. The standards we hold ourselves to stays cohesive, right? But a lot of times there can be a bit of a problem that arises, where there can be some butting of heads in what one of the groups that we belongs to interacts with another one. Does that make sense? And when that arises, the question kind of bubbles up. How do you navigate that space? How do you make decisions? And that question really has a karmic underpinning here in this particular major karmic cycle for every single person that is involved here. When you are kind of held to multiple standards or multiple expectations, what then do you do? How do you go about navigating that space? And that's really where things do start to kind of go wrong here, and we start to separate the wheat from the chaff a little bit. But in order to understand that, we have to understand the way this karmic cycle is kind of shaped up, because there is more than one person that is involved here. So like I said, I think there's an overall group that all of these people belong to. And that could be nation, like a nation, that could be a community. But there is some kind of, on the surface, they do look like they belong to some kind of similar group, but that is just on the surface, because as soon as you kind of start to dig into this, you start to realize that there's definitely subcultures where people start to kind of like distinguish themselves. But the way this is showing up in my mind, this karmic formation, is I see a divine feminine energy kind of like standing alone, like she's kind of off to the side here. And then I see another group, okay? And they're kind of forming a crescent moon, like around her energy, like shaped around her energy. And this group is a subgroup within some kind of larger group. And they're being distinguished by, I'm hearing like out of bounds. So it could be that they hang out outside the bounds of like this kind of overall group, or there's something about them that goes against another larger group that they find themselves in with this divine feminine. Something about them. It could be a secret association. Now, this group is actually very interesting because, like I said, they're forming around this divine feminine as a crescent moon. And I actually think on a spiritual level, they are all there for her. There's quite a lot of interest and fixation on her energy, and she does not understand this, that she's observed in the way that she is. And I would say that a lot of these people, a few of these people, they have at the very least a fixation on her, maybe an obsession with her and with her energy. But like I said, this group is very interesting because these are not soulmates to each other. The reason this group has formed is not because they know each other from past lives. They may well, but again, they have their connection because of her, because they are all somehow connected to her. And actually each person in this group, and I'm hearing like 3, 4, and 7. So that might be relevant. I think I might have heard that in another one where, so this is like a subgroup, right? So it could be as large as 7, it could be as small as 3, but I think there might be a Russian nesting doll kind of quality here where there's like an overall group of 7, maybe. And again, they're positioned outside the bounds of an even larger group here, like a workplace or a religious group or something where there's a structure and there's there's leadership, both professional maybe and social, right? It's outside the bounds of that. There's a smaller group within that of 4, and there's a smaller group within that of 3. There could be that kind of effect, and I'm hearing layers of culpability or levels of culpability, or like being a dick, basically. But all of them are gathered because of a connection here with her. They're all here on a spiritual level, I think, to actually learn from her, because her energy here is exalted in its feminine aspect. She is higher vibrational. And again, she doesn't know this, but I feel like Spirit has kind of allowed these souls to kind of gather around her in order to observe her. And because she's a very clear mirror in this feminine aspect, so then they can all get a glimpse of themselves in her mirror. That's what they're all kind of gathered here for. So again, this group, even though it shows up as a group, and I do think there's a certain amount of cohesion here, it's low vibrational cohesion because they are around each other, because each one of these people is oriented the same way within their personality, which is they're oriented around ego defense and they are oriented around facade management. And what I mean by that is these groups that they're in, these cultures that they're in, they take this kind of automatically, they feel that the expectations of these groups, or the principles, the virtues, the policies, even the routines, they take an automatic stance that just by their existence that they feel oppressed against by those. It's almost like the only way they can sense their own individuality. I think I'm being reductive here, but this is the way it wants to come out. Is like the only way that they can sense their individuality is by being contrarian, or by like distinguishing themselves from something that's traditional, or that is cohesive, or that kind of like has a plan, just like for the sake of it. But they feel like those only exist to control and to domineer and to like oppress them. And so that's why they kind of facade manage, because they feel like all these people, right? They feel like everybody kind of has to play the social game. This is a bit sad, but they truly believe that no one is truly genuine when they're expressing those social values, those shared values of a culture, a group, a religion, these workplace values. They really don't. They think everybody's kind of full of it. They think everybody knows and operates the same way, that you have to facade manage. You just have to play the game, but nobody's actually like that behind the scenes. That's what they actually think. And they think that the only way to get ahead, and they do feel entitled. These people kind of feel superior. They feel entitled. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But the only way to kind of rise up is to take strategic openings when they present themselves. If you feel like you can get away with something. And they think that is how people get ahead. I think they think that's how all people get ahead. At the very least, that's how they think they should and have to get ahead. And I just heard from a Taylor Swift song, it's like, at all costs, keep your good name. And that is, again, something that distinguishes this karmic group from this divine feminine, because there's 2 approaches to that, right? There's acting right. I actually have a good name because I behave well, and I care to keep my good name, and then there's, I don't have a good name to begin with, but people think that I do, and I'll do anything to protect the skeletons in my closet. And that's something that's like very, very like kind of, separate here. Now in this group, there's both men and women in this group that I'm picking up on, but all the people in this group are there and they're in this kind of karmic energy, because this definitely is a karmic group. and that karmic group has kind of formed. I really am almost getting as like an obstacle or something here, like to this divine feminine. I do think there are energies here that are egging this group on. This feels energetic, to kind of rival, harm. She is definitely in danger of some kind of ambushing energy, this divine feminine. But there are men and women in this very karmic group. But what they share in common, regardless of their gender or even how they like orient, what they have in common is they have a toxic feminine side. Their feminine side here, whether they're male or female, is in this like toxic feminine quality. So what does that mean? That means, so like for the men here, what that means about like their manhood and how they express their manhood is that it's very performative. There is a performance-driven quality here to this. So they have learned well, each of these cultures that they're a part of, their family, their religious group, their work environment, all of that, they understand and have absorbed the expectations of them as, you know, the virtues, the principles, the way they're supposed to handle themselves. But again, they feel oppressed. So they haven't integrated this within the self. There's kind of, there is a lacking in hermit energy. They're very much not adept in hermit energy. They might not like to be alone, which is another reason why this karmic group may have formed, is because they don't have a genuine connection. It's not built on the right things, but dear God, don't let me be alone. Like it could be that. I don't want to be alone with my thoughts. I don't want to have to self-reflect or consider my action. You know, it could be something like that. That would be a subconscious impulse, but they really lack in the hermit space. There's not a lot of inner light shed. These are people that don't do a lot of reflecting on their feelings and their thoughts and all of that stuff. So instead, they have absorbed what is expected of them, and then they perform that version of masculinity that they are expected to uphold, right? And the problem then arises that I actually think these groups that this masculine is a part of, and these masculines, because I think there's more than one karmic masculine here. We'll talk about that in a second. But I think they're actually very misaligned in the messaging that he gets about how he should be in order to receive something here from these groups, right? Because we receive something from the groups that we're in, whether it's attention, friendship, camaraderie, money, position, status, right? So it's giving him conflicting messages. And his version of dealing with that is this facade management. It's this double life energy, double life, double standard. It's living in a constant state of hypocrisy. And I get the image of a scorpion, like that scorpionic energy, but the scorpion is the lowest vibrational energy of that. It's very defensive. It's tit for tat. It stings to kill. It's that cruelty, cowardice kind of thing. And a scorpion hides in the shadows. And that's what I'm getting. I'm seeing these groups that he's a part of kind of in a circular fashion, all bumped up next to each other. And of course, circles coming together, it's not like squares or rectangles where they'll fit together perfectly and leave no space. They leave spaces and gaps, right? These groups and things. And that creates shadow and it creates places to hide. So whenever this overlapping of, well, you're supposed to cheat on your woman 10 times a day, and that's the only way this friend group is going to think you're a man, versus going to church or hanging out with the family where they're expected to behave in a virtuous like fashion. Well, when that comes up in one or the other, they just kind of get quiet, or they'll just try to hide, or they'll say just enough, or because they're trying to hide who they really are, and it's all ego defense. And it's because they want status and they want respect. Remember, I was saying the intersection between these cultural, traditional kind of expectations, decision making, and respect. They want respect, but they don't understand respect, and they don't know how to get respect. And that's a part of the karmas that are being worked out here. Now, given that they do have this, their own feminine side to their personality is toxic. They have quite an affinity and a love for toxic femininity. And so I think that they really do align with those toxic feminine characters. That's who they're used to being around in their friendships and forming romantic relationships. If that's going on here in this group, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But that is a part of the learning that they're all gathered around here. That might be a part of this experience because they're meant to learn about this. They all have this toxic feminine side, right? They're learning about this divine feminine side in order to attune their own energy, in order to notice the differences right here and kind of become aware of that. So the same tricks by which he forms and maintains his karmic relationships with females that mirror back his own toxicity to him, they're not going to work the same way with this divine feminine. They're not going to have the same effect. I think that will cause a tower moment here for this masculine. And given that there's not much hermit energy, there's not that ability to go within, to be self-reflective, to hold themselves accountable, to be self-disciplined. That's they're going to struggle here with that. Now, the females that are a part of this group, again, their feminine side is also toxic here, and there is still a performative quality to that. Why is that toxic femininity? Feminine energy is the being energy. Masculine energy is the doing energy. So that masculine side says, like, I am what I do, right? And I do what I do because of what I am, you know? And there's that like feedback loop. Feminine energy is I am this. Like, this just is what I am. Performing a type of femininity, especially where we've got cultural elements involved. This, again, it's virtue signaling. That's what they share in common here. In place of genuine principles and virtues that they claim, all they're doing is this performance of virtue and principle in order to gain social position and to save face. It's virtue signaling. And the feminine energies are doing this in order to, again, jockey for position within social groups. So this is like very competitive. And they could be competing, not maybe with also these masculines, but also like maybe with this divine feminine for some kind of leadership position, or I'm hearing just the word rival. So it could be, they could be trying to get this divine feminine to rival over one of these karmic masculines. I don't think that's going to work. Yeah, so that's kind of what's going on here in this group. Now I want to go back to this, this virtue signaling thing, because virtue signaling for me, okay, and I'm not diagnosing anyone, I'm not qualified to do that. Virtue signaling to me always is a sign, just a little bloop, a little, honestly a red flag, not yellow, it's red for me, that you're dealing with some kind of covert narcissism. And I know that covert narcissist is not an actual like diagnosis in the DSM, but think about those words together. Covert means hidden, some kind of hidden narcissism. If someone is signaling virtue that they do not possess and they do not care to embody, that is hollow, that is superficial, that is a hollow drum. Have you ever heard a hollow drum makes the most noise? Right? So there might be a lot of rhetoric here. There could even be a lot of talk about principles and virtue and, you know, this is the right way and this is the wrong way, coming from this karmic group here that in no way lives up to some kind of, it might be kind of, again, virtue signaling, that they're the right ones or they're the best ones. And all of it is in service of this ego defense state of consciousness, this facade management. They do not want to be caught out. They all feel kind of inadequate here. They know that they do not add up to the culture, but it's just not, I don't know if they don't think it's possible. It's just not an option for them to try to actually align with those virtues and principles because they feel oppressed against. Right? And that stands at stark contrast here with this divine feminine energy, who, when she has experienced the virtues and the principles of her religion or her family or whatever, it's not that she blindly accepts all of them. Far from it. She has an internal process. She excels in that hermit energy. So she thinks quite a bit about it. I think she's very contemplative, and I think she tries to get to the heart of the matter. She tries to nail down why and the how. You know, why does this exist? She also, there's not a narcissism here, because she acknowledges that her elders and the people that came before her are not stupid. She may not agree with them on everything. She may not even have the same values as them on everything, but she does know that they're not stupid, and that the reason why she's being taught certain things, there has to be a reason why. And she gets curious about that reason why. And she kind of tries to find, okay, well, they're telling me to behave like this and this. And I can see that behaving like this and this could actually circumnavigate and prevent this disaster, this disaster, this disaster, and this disaster. I can see why they're telling me to be this way. Now, she might say, well, there's another way that I think I could do, but see how it's contemplative? See how it's alive? See how she's making it her own? In a way, it's kind of a deconstruction process, but she doesn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So she's deeply contemplative. She makes it her own. And because she understands the rules, have you ever heard the quote, learn the rules so that you can break them properly? That's what she's doing. So I think this karmic group may actually, there's quite a bit misunderstanding about this divine feminine's personality, but it's just because they really cannot fathom the cohesion within her personality. And that she really is as simple in the best way and uncomplicated and not jockeying and not strategic as she is. They really cannot fathom that that's where the parts of her personality that have confused them, and even the parts of her personality that have been very, very matter of fact and very, in their decision making and very curt, they just can't imagine that that's where it comes from. But it's because they do not possess that within themselves, and so instead they project their own state of ego defense consciousness, their own split personality, their own lack of virtue and performative nature onto her, when it just could not be further from the truth. So they might have even thought that she's a square or a rule follower or like a Poindexter, like just for the sake of it. This divine feminine here will break rules. But when she breaks rules, it's much different and for much different reasons than when these people break rules, because they do it to be selfish and to get what they want because they think they can get away with it. She breaks rules because she understands the heart. So when she does, she preserves the heart and the goal of whatever virtues and values and principles that she believes in. You'll notice that there's a heart to this. And I'm actually seeing this most beautiful image in my mind. I could cry. I just saw this divine feminine crawl up to like a giant beating heart. And it's just so red and plush and like beating. And I just saw her lay her head on it. And she just said, because what is she saying? It's like, because I know you. Because I hear you, I know you. Because I know you, I love you. And because I love you, I protect you. So you know how people are always saying in the spiritual community that you have love consciousness and you have fear consciousness? Well, by God, this feminine is just very, very motivated by love. So the virtues and the principles that she lives by and sticks by and makes decisions by, we're going back to that, cultural decision-making, respect, and how she makes her decisions, it's all very much motivated by this love, and her love is based on her understanding. She's taken the time to actually get to know something, to really try to discover the heart of it before she accepts it or rejects it. And this has made her a very great partner and a very great friend. She's got very good social skills, very good social hygiene. She's very empathetic, and she's a very virtuous person. And this has to do with the groups and the people and the places that she associates with. And I think that's where this gets a bit unfortunate, because she's come a cropper of this group here that's just, they are very good at facade management. They've just been doing it since they were a child, all of them. And she doesn't understand that. That's a bit of her karmic lesson here, is not everyone has the same heart as you. Not everyone has a pure intention like you do. And she would not be associating with this people if she kind of realized that they were capable of this ambush energy and that this is how they kind of go about their life. And it's not a judgmental energy, it's kind of healthy judgment energy, because she's preserving her principles and her values. This is a divine feminine who has decided that the most important thing for her is to live a virtuous, like principled life according to her own principles. And that's why she's got this strong hermit energy. That's what they don't understand. That's really the contrast here. Because in order to actually execute on living a principled life, you have to become self-reflective. In order to be self-reflective, you have to have that inner light turned on, which then leads to that healthy judgment that we were talking about. That's a part of that self-attunement process. The part of you that says, do I belong here? Does this feel right for me? Have I been living up to my virtues and my principles? If not, is it because maybe have I outgrown them? Do I need to update them in some way? If I still do resonate with them, is there some kind of change I can make in my daily life to ensure that I am actually living up to the things that I value and I hold dear? And having that process strong and very well oiled naturally boosts the self-reflective process, which leads to a very strong relationship with self, which leads to strong self-trust and a deep self-knowledge. And when you have a genuine knowledge of yourself that comes from a very real place, that is the place that actually gives rise to those values and principles to begin with. And they're at one with who you are. And that's what's going on here with this divine feminine. It's a very alive space. It's a very organic space. It's in constant communication and flux. And again, I'm just seeing her walk right up to this big, juicy beating heart and lay her head on it and just say, because I hear you, I know you. And because I know you, I love you. And because I love you, I protect you. This feminine loves her principles and her virtues and her values. And she protects them because she understands them. She understands the value that they bring to her life, which is immense. Because having those values and those principles helps her make decisions. It helps her avoid karmics. It helps her know where she wants to invest her energy and her time and where she doesn't. It also, I think more than anything, it really does add a lot of texture and color and interest to her world because it gives her purpose. It gives her a sense of a very mission-driven life. So actually everything is very exciting over here in her remit, and it gives her a chance for her to challenge herself in a way that feels good and healthy and rewarding. And I think actually this karmic group probably thinks they misunderstand this energy in her because they have no concept of it themselves. They have no self-knowledge of it, So I think they might think she's a square or she's a rule follower for having principles and virtues that she actually does value adhering to. And it's the absolute opposite, where her life is much more vivid and much more exciting and much more meaningful. And she doesn't have to go to these external things like these fleeting ephemeral highs and these dramatic relationships in order to just feel entertained or to occupy herself, because she's already occupied in this marathon that is her life. And it's a part of this self-actualizing process. It's so deeply in tuned with her, and they just don't have a concept of that. And the thing is, like, when we see somebody that really does apply themselves after a goal, really does go after some kind of excellence in some way, uses their self-discipline to actually live up to a virtue, that is impressive, because it's hard and they don't have to do it. And we all know what it feels like to stumble and to fall short of our goals. And we all know that it takes so much more energy to get back up once you've fallen down. And when somebody does that and they have a commitment to doing that, and they could absolutely get away with not doing that, and yet they continue to, it says something about who that person is at their core. And it's impressive. It's respectable. And remember what I was saying at the beginning of this reading? That I wanted to explore in this message, that intersection between some kind of cultural, traditional aspect, decision-making, and respect. So this divine feminine here has built this very beautiful inner world and this very beautiful inner engine that she is at attune with. Her inner world is seamlessly connected to her outer world. She is not existing in a state of hypocrisy. And where she discovers hypocrisy in herself, she gets curious about that. That is her path. That is the next step in her path. She tries to figure out where that hypocrisy arises from. She tries to, because I hear you, I know you, right? And so then she can kind of untangle it and then integrate that back into herself. And that is so impressive. And so she just naturally garners a certain amount of respect because of who she is and how she lives. But again, this karmic group over here, they do not understand that, because in lieu of that, remember, this karmic group, they really, I think, want respect and admiration more than anything. But their way of going about that is so disjointed and disconnected from that inner space. They almost discount the inner space and authenticity altogether. They might think that that's like a hindrance in the pursuit of that, because everything that they feel comes, what they think respect is, it's all connected to the external world. And the way that they navigate the external world is, again, very cut off from who they are in the inner space. And so they want some kind of position or status that they want to struggle to get. And the way that they go about doing that is by trying to read people, but they read people in a very superficial way in order to try to understand what the person in front of them wants from them at any given moment in time. And then they try to craft a face and a mask that reflects that back to that person so that they get chosen. It's a real pick-me energy. And it's very superficial here. And these people don't have a bottom threshold that they're not willing to go beyond, because they feel like that's just a part of the human experience. Hypocriting yourself, maintaining this state of hypocrisy, but keeping it secret and hidden. They really do think that that's what every successful person does. And so this is the kind of person that could gain, I'm hearing, if money's where you find happiness, you'll always be poor. There's another song, it's like, I can't remember what it is, but this is the kind of person who could obtain success and riches and still feel lacking and still feel poor, because they've just missed the point of where fulfillment actually comes from. And I think that's what this is actually after. They're after fulfillment, and they think it's a bunch of middlemen. We talk about this. The ego is the king or the queen of putting a bunch of middlemen in the place and of actual fulfillment and self-realization, because they think, okay, fulfillment comes from being respected in the community, which comes from garnering some kind of status. In order to gain status, I have to have position, I have to be looked at in a certain way, I have to craft a certain image. See how this is all outside of like their own self. So they live this life of ego defense and facade management. They put one mask on and then another mask on. It's this double life, double standard kind of energy. These are also the kind of people that think they're smarter than they actually are. And they think that the average person that is around them is much stupider than they actually are. Because I think it's just a natural feature of this way of living. And remember, they don't have an inner reflective process. So they're not being very self-reflective. They lack the ability to be self-disciplined and to hold themselves accountable, which means they're not really thinking a lot about this, because I actually think it's a natural feature of this way of living that the mask slips, and that things kind of come to an end in their romantic relationships and their professional lives. And then they get confused about that, right? And the reason that it comes to an end is because people do kind of cotton on, more so than this person even realizes. Because you can kind of sense this sort of energy when somebody's like being phony with you, or they're trying to win over your affections, and they're blowing too much smoke up your ass, or like they're really going at it. We've all experienced that, but also the cracks, they fall through the cracks because, again, they try to read people, and they do that by trying to understand what groups and what, where the person in front of them affiliates themselves and what's important to them in order to craft that face, right? But then there's inevitably going to be some overlap. And they might be observed and not even realize that they're observed sometimes, in a different group than when they met somebody originally. And people do kind of catch on to the hypocrisy. That, oh, wait a second, you said this over here now, and they catch on to that. And when that's realized, then this person is seen for who and what they are, which is kind of like the lowest common denominator. This is like the epitome of human weakness. This is where this divine feminine over here, it's very impressive that even though she could get away with being less than she is, she doesn't. But these people over here, it's like maybe they have garnered some kind of status or something, but even that wouldn't be good enough for them. And they kind of are always falling prey to that, like they don't have a consistent identity that they bring with them into every group. You know what I'm saying? They always are willing to throw themselves over. It's kind of Weasley energy. It's guile. It's maneuvering that they have to maintain through ego defense mechanisms. They maintain this, and they maintain their position here through denial, lying by omission, just leaving certain things out, projection, politicking, rivaling, straw man, logical fallacies. It's tricks. It's hollow. And I just heard, again, a hollow drum makes the most noise. So they're not really saying anything. And they might think, again, this is very much like, well, I don't understand. I go through the motions. Because they look over here at the divine feminine and they're like, I do all the stuff she does. But they're missing the heart. And the heart is an internal thing. And that's really, I'm literally seeing spirit light, an internal light on that hermit energy. That's like really what this is truly about. So that goes to this karmic lesson of how is it that you build respect? It's not through politicking in the external world and going through, it's about connecting deeply with who you are and bringing that into fulfillment. And I'm hearing that quote that says, if you bring forth what is inside of you, what's inside of you will save you. And if you don't bring it, then that will destroy you. And I feel like these people may be at a crossroads now. And I think they're being held to account here because this karmic cycle has been broken. I am hearing the mask has like well and truly slipped. There could be people that are like at them that are like demanding answers, or kind of, it's pitchfork energy, to be honest. It's like, like, why have you been this way or whatever? And this person is in a state of ego defense, and they're at this crossroads. Like, are you going to continue to rival like in the external world? Are you going to keep fighting for this bullshit way of living, basically? Like, just come clean. That's what this person needs to do. It's like, yeah, I was trying to impress you, and I threw myself over in the process, and I don't even know who I am. I have this hollow sense of identity because this is how I've lived my life. And I need to be like, I'm going to go hermit. I'm going to be left alone. They have to kind of get to this point where it's like, just like this divine feminine, where it's like, well, I don't really care if you like me or not like me. Because I think that's what broke this karmic cycle, because it's people-pleasing energy. And I think that's, this divine feminine had this in the past as well. But I do think that she's realized something, that what was being asked here. I think like there was some kind of question where it's like, if you had to choose, divine feminine, between gaining the respect of one of these people or like this group, which would require her to somehow debase herself or be less virtuous than what she actually is, what do you choose? And this, the divine feminine, again, it's like there's not a desperate energy around respect. She wants herself. She wants virtue. And so she's going to say, listen, if you're the kind of person or the kind of group that is not going to respect me if I stand on principle, if I stand on virtue, I don't really want, what is your respect anyways? I don't really want your respect. And please, dear God, don't count me among them. I don't want to be counted among your ranks. This is what I'm saying is like her virtues guide her decisions. And it's like, well, I don't want to be associated with them. So even though it's hard and I'm probably going to receive some level of backlash and ridicule socially from these idiots, because that's the level of consciousness they exist on, then that's what I will do. and I will accept those consequences. And the irony is that none of these people can do the same. And she's actually shown immense strength here. And she is worthy of respect. That's what makes her worthy of respect. But I think this group behaves this way because they like to kind of see people fall or like debase themselves or not be as great as they actually are, because it makes them, it's like taking a drag off a cigarette. Like, oh, okay, it makes them feel much better about them living in the state of consciousness that they are. So this is a group that's entirely brought together because they want to stay stuck. They don't want to progress. They don't want to meet life and dance with her, move with her, groove with her. They don't want to dance with life. They just want to try to get away. If they can get away with it, they will get away with it. But they want the spoils as well. So it's an immense state of hypocrisy. This is a pirate. This is pirate energy. I haven't produced anything, but I want it all. And yeah, I feel like they're at a crossroads here. And I think this feminine breaking free of that has put this, yeah, and she's a very clear mirror here. So I actually think that I'm gonna leave this video here. There's more information coming out about the end of this karmic cycle. In the next video, I'm gonna go more into the tower moment that occurred, because there was a tower moment. I think the tower moment happened in the past. I don't know where you're at on the timeline. If it hasn't happened, it will happen. And we'll talk about why that is. It's because of a fundamental misunderstanding of this divine feminine's personality that I'm gonna look more into in this next video. But I think this video has been long enough. So if that resonated, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And I do just want to say, I feel like Spirit's kind of spitting these out in little chunks to assist with your processing. So it's okay to percolate. And I'm hearing open-ended questions. They may try to answer open-ended questions that exist kind of like in your energy fields. I don't exactly know, but so I will have the message up tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time if you are kind of following along with this energy. So, all right, that's all I have. Bye, guys.